She had everything: money, beauty, a last name that opened doors before she even knocked. To the outside world, Isabel Fairchild was living the dream: a mansion, on the hill, silk gowns, and parents who treated her like royalty. Her life looked like a fairy tale. But let me tell you a secret: every fairy tale hides a curse. And Isabel's story, it didn't begin with love. It began with a decision, one that would take her from diamond-studded dinner parties to a prison cell soaked in silence and grief. You see, Isabel grew up believing she was lucky. She never knew what it meant to struggle. Everything was handed to her: designer shoes, private tutors, weekend getaways to Europe, just because she looked tired. Her parents worshipped her, in their own way. They dressed her like a porcelain doll, showcased her at charity events, and planned her future down to the very man she would marry. A man with a strong lineage, a bank account, a brand. But Isabel didn't want a brand. She wanted something real. And one rainy afternoon in a dusty bookstore downtown, she found it. He wasn't wearing a suit. He didn't even notice the designer bag slung over her shoulder. He smiled when she dropped her book. And that was the beginning. Daniel Carter. Poor, ambitious, unapologetically alive. He didn't see her as a Fairchild. He saw her. They talked about dreams, not deals, about meaning, not money. And for the first time, Isabel wasn't someone's daughter. She was just Isabel. She kept him a secret, at first, but secrets have a way of escaping. When her parents found out, the world came crashing down. They weren't disappointed. They were disgusted. Either you leave him, or you leave this family. They thought she would beg, cry, apologize. She didn't. She walked out with nothing but her name, and even that soon would mean very little. Because Isabel didn't know what poverty looked like. She didn't know how heavy groceries could feel when you carried them with a baby in your belly and regret in your heart. But she would learn. Oh, she would learn. And that's where her tragedy begins. She didn't cry the night she left. Isabel stood at the top of the grand staircase in her family's estate, one hand gripping the railing, the other clutching a small leather bag. It held 3 changes of clothes, a crumpled photo of her and Daniel, and an envelope of cash she had secretly withdrawn from a forgotten account. Her mother's voice echoed from the dining room, sharp and calculated. She'll be back in a week. Let her run. It's just another tantrum. But Isabel wasn't running away. She was running towards something, towards someone, and in her heart she believed it was love. Daniel met her outside, standing by the curb in his dented old hatchback. He had no flowers, no speech, just a hand that reached for hers, steady, warm, and real. They drove away in silence, and just like that, a life of privilege disappeared in the rearview mirror. Their first apartment was nothing like the palatial bedroom she'd grown up in. It was tiny, drafty, and smelled faintly of mold and burnt coffee. The walls were thin, the mattress sagged, but Daniel smiled like it was a palace. "This is ours," he whispered, holding her close that first night. And she believed him. She wanted to believe that love could fill in the cracks, patch the leaks, and silence the doubts. During the day, Daniel attended classes at a community college. He studied late into the night with a hunger Isabel had never seen before. She admired that about him, the fire in his eyes, the way he believed he could climb mountains just by pushing harder. So she made it possible. She worked. At first, she got a part-time job at a local cafe. It was humbling, wearing an apron instead of designer coats, scrubbing tables, getting yelled at by customers who didn't know or care that she used to drink wine older than them. Then she started cleaning houses on weekends, picking up after families who reminded her of her own, women who wore the perfume her mother used, little girls who tossed tantrums in rooms full of toys Isabel could name by brand. But she didn't flinch, because every paycheck meant Daniel could focus. Every sore muscle meant he was one step closer to graduating. Every tear she wiped alone in the bathroom mirror meant she was sacrificing for something bigger. 2 years passed, then came the test, 2 lines. Isabel stared at the result in their cramped bathroom, her hands trembling. She was 24, with no health insurance, no family, no clue what to do. Daniel was quiet when she told him. Too quiet. Eventually he hugged her, said he'd figure it out, that they would be okay, that he would make her proud. He picked up a night job at a warehouse. Isabel quit the cafe and started working full-time as a receptionist, despite the swelling in her ankles and the constant nausea. There was no baby shower, no designer nursery, just hand-me-downs, thrift store blankets, and a leaking sink they could never afford to fix. But when their son was born, a boy with her eyes, and Daniel's stubborn frown, Isabel held him against her chest and felt something new. This wasn't sacrifice. This was love. Raw, exhausting, but real. The months blurred. Daniel was rarely home, always between shifts or studying. Isabel juggled bottles, bills, and breakdowns. Her body changed. Her face lost its glow. She no longer wore makeup, only exhaustion and stretch marks, and the weight of invisible expectations. Sometimes she'd walk by mirrors and not recognize herself, but she kept going. Then, the second pregnancy came, unplanned, unexpected. She didn't cry this time. She just sat down on the bathroom floor, her toddler tugging at her sleeve, and stared at the ceiling like it held all the answers she didn't. Daniel tried. She believed he did. But he didn't see her anymore. He saw obligation. She saw a future that was slipping through her fingers faster than she could catch it. The delivery of their daughter nearly broke her. Postpartum hit harder the second time. Nights became black holes. She would hold her baby rock, her sing softly, and wonder what it would feel like to vanish. She told Daniel. Once, "I think something's wrong with me." He brushed her hair back, kissed her forehead, and said, "You're just tired." Despite everything Isabel still believed. When Daniel graduated with honors, she cried harder than he did. She'd waited for this day, prayed for it, pushed her body, her mind, her soul for it. He landed a great job in the city. The salary was more than she'd ever imagined. They moved into a new apartment nicer than anything they'd had in years. He bought her a necklace, said thank you, and for a brief moment she felt it again, the promise that it had all been worth it, that the storm had passed. She started dreaming again, of maybe going back to school, opening a small shop, something, just for her. But the thing about storms is this: they don't always leave when the sun comes out. Sometimes, they hide just long enough to strike harder. It started subtly. At first, it was Daniel forgetting to text when he'd be home late. Then it became weekends spent working overtime. Or so he claimed. He stopped asking how the kids were sleeping, stopped noticing the bags under Isabel's eyes, stopped seeing her. She chalked it up to stress. New job, new expectations. She wanted to believe that. She needed to. But something inside her had begun to wilt, and no one noticed. Their new apartment was larger, cleaner, with modern appliances and polished floors that didn't squeak. Isabel decorated it with second-hand charm. She made the space feel like a home, even if it didn't quite feel like hers. Daniel came and went like a ghost in pressed suits. He started talking to her, less just headlines about his day, or the kids' daycare payments. When Isabel tried to talk about herself, about maybe starting a class, or volunteering at the local library, Daniel smiled politely and changed the subject. "You'll have time for all that later," he said once, grabbing his laptop. "Let's just get settled first." But she wasn't settled. She was sinking. Each day felt the same: breakfast, laundry, cleaning, school runs, dinner dishes, repeat. She lived on autopilot. She became a mother, a housekeeper, a scheduler, everything except a woman. Her mirror became a stranger, her laughter rare. And when she looked into Daniel's eyes, she didn't see love anymore. She saw distance. Daniel started locking his phone. He always took it into the bathroom, whispered into it at night, slept with it under his pillow. Isabel noticed. Of course she did. But she didn't say anything at first, because saying it out loud would make it real. Instead, she tried harder. She made his favorite meals, bought a new dress with the little money she'd saved, booked a sitter, and planned a surprise dinner at his favorite restaurant he cancelled an hour before. Work emergency, he said without apology. She cried in the bathtub that night silently so the kids wouldn't hear. One afternoon, Isabel organized a birthday party for their daughter. Balloons, cake, handmade decorations. She did it all alone. Daniel showed up late, phone glued to his hand, gave the kids a distracted kiss, and spent most of the party outside taking calls. She watched him through the window, talking and laughing with someone who wasn't her, while she cleaned up frosting with one hand and rocked their baby with the other. No one clapped for her. No one said thank you. She felt like a ghost wearing a mother's smile. A few nights later, Isabel couldn't sleep. She walked into the kitchen to get a glass of water, and there he was sitting in the dark, smiling at his phone, whispering. She didn't speak, just watched from the hallway. That wasn't how he looked at her anymore. That soft gaze, the crooked smile. It had been years since she'd seen it pointed her way, and in that moment she knew. She didn't need to check his messages, didn't need proof. Her heart already had it. The next morning she asked gently Daniel, "Is there someone else?" He didn't deny it. He didn't even look surprised. "I'm not happy," he said. And then, like a knife dressed as truth, "You've changed, Isabel." He listed it all out, her messy hair, her tired eyes, her lack of ambition. "You used to be radiant," he said. "Now you're just tired, boring." She stood there, mouth dry, hands shaking, and all she could think was, "I'm tired because I gave everything to this, to you." She had carried the weight of their life on her shoulders so he could chase his dreams. And now he resented her for the bruises it left behind. It didn't take long before he stopped hiding it. Within months he moved out. He didn't rent a hotel. He bought a new house, a sleek condo uptown with granite counters and a wine fridge, and moved in with her. The woman from the phone, his co-worker, younger, stylish, energetic. He took the kids on weekends, told them Mummy needs time to rest. He painted himself as the calm, stable parent. And Isabel. She unraveled. She sat in silence while her kids played. She forgot to eat, forgot to sleep. She stared out the window and wondered what had happened to the girl who once gave up everything for love. The final blow came one Sunday. Daniel came to drop the kids off. He walked into the apartment like he still belonged, took a look around and said flatly, "You should sell this place. It's depressing. You could use the money to get your hair done or something. You've let yourself go." He smiled, and Isabel snapped. Not loudly, not violently, just completely. Something inside her went cold. The kind of cold that doesn't scream or cry. The kind that waits. The day after Daniel left that comment about her hair, her looks, her worth. Isabel didn't cry. She sat by the window for hours, wrapped in the silence of her apartment. The dishes in the sink stayed dirty. The laundry remained untouched. The world outside kept spinning, indifferent to her unraveling. And still, she didn't cry. That terrified her more than anything, because once she would have screamed. Once she would have curled up in bed and sobbed until her ribs hurt. But now she just stared, numb, hollow, gone. Isabel knew she needed help. One morning she walked into a local clinic and whispered, "I think I'm not okay." It was the first time she admitted it out loud to anyone. They referred her to a therapist, a soft-spoken woman named Dr. Rowe, who wore thick glasses and always smelled like peppermint. Their sessions began slowly. Isabel spoke in pieces, fragments of a life she once had, a man she once loved, and the woman she no longer recognized. Dr. Rowe listened without judgment. Sometimes she'd ask, "And how did that make you feel?" Isabel hated the question, not because it was wrong, but because she didn't know the answer. "Like I'm a shadow," she said once. "Like I'm not even in the room with myself anymore." Her children were the only reason she got up in the morning. She packed their lunches, braided her daughter's hair, kissed her son on the forehead before school. She did it all with a smile, a tight, stretched smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. On the outside, she looked stable again, functional, present. But inside, she was balancing on broken glass. Every time the kids asked why Daddy didn't come home anymore, a part of her fractured. She made up stories. He's busy, he's working a lot. He still loves you. She never said the truth. She didn't know how. Her friends, the few who had stuck around, had plenty to say. You should get a makeover. Start dating again. Prove to him what he lost. They meant well, but their words scratched her ears like sandpaper. Because she didn't want revenge. She didn't want to win. She just wanted to stop hurting. She wanted to walk past a mirror and not flinch. She wanted to sleep through the night without replaying that final argument. She wanted to breathe without feeling like her lungs were full of water. She started walking in the mornings, just her and the sunrise. There was something comforting about empty sidewalks, the smell of dew, the sound of leaves crunching under her feet. For 30 minutes each day, she could pretend she was healing, that she was more than what he left behind. She began journaling. One entry read, "Today, I watched a bird steal a sandwich from a man in the park. I laughed. It felt foreign, but it happened." That entry meant more than she expected. It was a reminder that even in grief, life finds strange ways to pull you back. It came out of nowhere. A text from an old coworker. No words, just a link. Isabel clicked. It was a feature article on Daniel Now, a rising executive at a top firm. The photo showed him in a tailored suit standing beside a woman in a red dress, champagne in hand. The woman was her, the one from the calls, the one who took everything. They were smiling, arms around each other, posed in front of the house he once promised to Isabel. The caption, "Power couple to watch in 2025. She nearly dropped the phone. It wasn't just the betrayal, it was the celebration of it. Like her pain had been edited out of the story, rewritten into a stepping stone for his success. That night, Isabel couldn't breathe. She lay on the bathroom floor, shaking, gasping. Her children asleep in the next room, and she, the woman who gave up her entire world for love, was breaking quietly all over again. Her therapist warned her about relapse. Healing isn't linear, she'd said. But nothing could have prepared Isabel for how heavy it felt this time. She stopped walking, stopped journaling, skipped meals. The apartment darkened, the fridge emptied, the laundry piled again. She would sit in the kids' room after they fell asleep, holding their stuffed animals, whispering apologies into the silence. Apologies for being weak, for not being enough, for not being able to stop their father from replacing her. She dreamed of disappearing, not in a dramatic way, not in violence, just vanishing, like steam from a mug left untouched. It came on a Wednesday, a formal letter from Daniel's lawyer, requesting shared custody but suggesting the kids spend full weeks at his new house. The letter listed reasons: stability, routine, better environment. And then this line, "Mr. Carter is concerned that Ms. Fairchild's mental state may not currently be in the best interest of the children." She stared at that sentence for hours, read it until the ink blurred through her tears. After everything, every sacrifice, every scar, now he was questioning her ability to be a mother. The knife was still in her back, but now he was twisting it. There's a moment in every woman's life when she stops asking, "Why did this happen to me?" and starts asking, "What am I going to do about it?" For Isabel, that moment came the night she read the custody letter. It was like her soul had finally hit the floor of rock bottom, and instead of breaking, it started to build something. Not rage, not revenge, something colder, something sharper. She wasn't just angry anymore. She was done. She didn't respond to the letter immediately. Instead, she called her therapist, updated her on everything, and began documenting. Every school drop-off, every meal, every emotional moment, not for validation, for evidence. She started reading legal blogs, joining online communities for women who had lost everything and fought back. She learned terms like emotional abuse, financial control, reputation-based coercion, words that fit what she lived. Every night, after tucking her kids in, she opened her laptop and studied. While Daniel slept peacefully in his expensive sheets next to his new love, Isabel was building her case. Weeks passed, spring arrived. Isabel walked into a salon for the first time in years. She didn't ask for anything fancy, just a soft cut, something fresh, something that whispered, "I'm not her anymore." The stylist said, "You look lighter." She smiled, not because she was healed, but because the woman in the mirror finally looked awake. Buried in an old drawer under hospital papers and baby pictures, Isabel found something she didn't even remember keeping. It was a prenup, one her parents had insisted on before she left them, a last desperate act to protect her legacy before she ran off with Daniel. She had signed it reluctantly. Daniel had waved it off. Now, years later, it was gold. Because in that prenup in black and white was a clause that Daniel had completely forgotten about. In the event of infidelity, proven by substantial evidence, spousal rights to shared assets are subject to full forfeiture. She read it 3 times, then once more, and then, she smiled, not because she wanted his money, because she finally held power. She found a woman named Eliza Whitmore, a divorce attorney, known for defending women who'd been left with nothing. Eliza read the documents, took one long look at Isabel, and said simply, "Let's begin." They drafted a counter letter calm, calculated, and laced with quiet venom. It didn't scream. It didn't accuse. It simply laid out facts. It cited dates, screenshots, financial inconsistencies, custody timelines, emotional neglect, and of course the prenup clause. At the bottom of the letter, Eliza added one line that Isabel would never forget. "We are no longer asking, we are informing." When Daniel received the response, he texted her, "What is this? I thought we agreed to keep this civil." Isabel didn't reply. She didn't need to, because civility was what he had weaponized for years, using politeness as a way to silence her control, her guilt trip, her into accepting less. Now she was done playing the quiet ex-wife. She was the woman who survived him. When Daniel received the response, he texted her, "What is this? I thought we agreed to keep this civil." Isabel didn't reply. She didn't need to, because civility was what he had weaponized for years, using politeness as a way to silence her control, her guilt trip her into accepting less. Now she was done playing the quiet ex-wife. She was the woman who survived him. That night, Isabel didn't celebrate with champagne. She didn't post a quote on social media. She didn't even tell her kids the details. She just made them their favorite spaghetti, lit a candle on the table, sat with them, watched them laugh, and inside her there was no joy, just peace, quiet, solid. For the first time in years, she had stopped chasing, stopped pleading. She didn't need Daniel to apologize, didn't need the world to validate her. She had chosen herself, and that was enough. Or so she thought. Because just as life began to settle, just as she believed the worst was over, she didn't know there was one last knife waiting. And this time, it would come from the darkest corner of her soul. No one ever thinks they could be the one. The one on the evening news, the one in the courtroom, the one with blood on their hands. Isabel never imagined it either. She thought she had already survived the worst. But grief has layers, and betrayal. It's a slow poison, and Isabel had been drinking it for years. It was a Friday afternoon when the call came. She had just picked up the kids from school. They were laughing in the back seat, arguing about what movie to watch that night. It was a normal day, a good one even. Then her phone rang. The number was unfamiliar, a real estate firm. A woman's voice. "Hi, Ms. Fairchild. Just confirming your ex-husband and his fiancée closed on the new house this morning. The one next to your children's school. We're finalizing the transfer. They're officially co-owners." Isabel's fingers went cold. "Wait," she whispered. "What did you say?" The woman repeated it cheerfully. "Yes, they mentioned wanting to be closer to the kids. Family-friendly area and all that." Family. That one word exploded in her chest like a grenade. Daniel hadn't just moved on. He hadn't just left her. He was replacing her right down to the neighborhood, the role, the routines. Her children would see that woman every day, would maybe call her by Isabel's name someday in a slip, would have their birthday celebrated in a house she used to dream about. She pulled over to the side of the road, sat there shaking, while her children kept laughing in the back. That night she couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't breathe without feeling a scream lodged in her chest. She sat in the dark, clutching the armrest of the couch like it was the only thing keeping her tethered to the earth. Every second, every flashback, every insult, every memory, it all played on a loop. She just wanted to be seen, heard, acknowledged. She told the babysitter she was going to drop off something at Daniel's place. It was late, rainy, quiet. When he opened the door, he looked surprised, not angry, not afraid, just annoyed. What now, Isabel? Behind him, the other woman appeared, wearing one of Daniel's shirts. Isabel's gaze didn't flinch. She stepped inside without asking, her coat dripping, her fingers tight around the object in her purse. Daniel raised an eyebrow. Seriously, you can't keep showing up. Shut up, she said calmly, clearly. And for the first time, Daniel fell silent. Things escalated quickly. Words flew, accusations, sarcasm, laughter the kind that mocks, not entertains. The other woman called her unstable, called her obsessed, said things like, "You need help and you're embarrassing yourself." Then Daniel, smug, arrogant Daniel, said the line that snapped her. He leaned forward inches from her face and whispered, "You were just the practice round." No one remembers the exact movement. Maybe it was the rain. Maybe it was the years of pain boiling over. Maybe it was that final spark, the way he looked at her like she was nothing. All Isabel remembered was the sound, a thud, a gasp, then silence. Her hands, red, her body shaking, Daniel on the floor, the woman screaming, scrambling, another flash, another cry, then nothing. It wasn't loud, it wasn't cinematic, it was tragic, plain, and real. She sat on the front steps when the police arrived, didn't run, didn't speak, just sat in the rain, her coat soaked, her face blank. The officers approached cautiously, guns drawn, commands shouted. She didn't resist. As they handcuffed her, one of them asked, "Ma'am, are you carrying any weapons?" She shook her head once, then said softly, "No, just memories." It was all over the news. Suburban mother commits double homicide in shocking domestic case. Once a prominent heiress, now a suspect. Photos of Isabel flashed across every screen before and after. Then and now. Fairy tale and nightmare. People whispered, commented, judged. But no one truly knew the story behind the blood. Except her. And now The courtroom was silent when the verdict came down. Isabel stood tall, wrists bound in front of her chin slightly raised. There were no tears, no gasps, no outbursts. Just silence, the kind that only happens when everyone in the room knows a tragedy has reached its bitter end. Guilty. 2 counts. 25 years. Some people said she didn't flinch. Others swore she smiled. But the truth was simpler. She felt nothing. Because the woman who once packed a suitcase for love, who once held her baby with trembling hands in a tiny apartment, who once begged her husband to come home, that woman was already gone. In prison, Isabel was a ghost with a number. She kept to herself, took her meals in silence, attended mandatory therapy sessions and parenting classes, wrote letters to her children every week, even when she didn't know if they were reading them. She didn't ask for sympathy. She didn't tell her story like a victim. She simply existed one breath at a time in a cage built from grief and regret. But even in her silence, people noticed her. Inmates came to her with their own stories. Women who'd been left behind, used, forgotten, broken. And slowly Isabel began to speak. Not about the blood, not about Daniel, but about everything that happened before the end. It started with one letter. A prison volunteer, a college student doing a thesis on domestic abuse, survivors asked Isabel if she could share one of her journal entries in a paper. Isabel agreed. With one request: don't write it like a sob story. Write it like a warning. The letter was simple, raw, devastating. Don't call it love when it costs you your reflection. Don't stay silent for someone who never asks how you feel. And don't ever give so much of yourself that you disappear. The paper was published, then reposted, then picked up by blogs, podcasts, talk shows. Before long, people were calling her the woman who loved too deeply. Some called her a monster. Some called her a martyr. But most called her a mirror. She didn't see them for years. Her daughter stopped writing after she turned 13. Her son never replied at all. Isabel never pushed. She understood. They deserved to grieve in their own way, even if grieving meant hating her. But when her daughter turned 19, she came, not with rage, not with softness, just questions. Was any of it real? Why didn't you leave when it hurt? Do you regret loving him? Isabel answered honestly. Yes, and no. Her daughter didn't cry. She just nodded, stood up and hugged her mother for the first time in a decade. That embrace, brief, hesitant but real, was more healing than 100 therapy sessions. Isabel was granted parole after 17 years. Her hair had turned grey, her skin lined with time and sadness. She didn't return to her old city. She moved to a quiet town by the coast, took a job at a used bookstore, and lived in a modest cottage with a garden out back. People didn't recognize her anymore, but women would still come in quiet, tired, searching for something and talk to her without knowing why. She listened. Sometimes she told them stories, never hers, not exactly, but close enough to make them think. On a rainy afternoon years later, Isabel wrote her final journal entry. I thought my story ended the night I lost control, but maybe it really began the moment I realized I mattered even if no one told me. If you're reading this and you feel invisible, you're not. And if you're giving too much too often for too long, stop, please, before your love becomes your undoing. She placed the journal on a shelf in the back room of the store. A simple black notebook, no title, no name, just one word on the first page, enough. She didn't want to be remembered as a killer. She wanted to be remembered as a reminder that even the softest women can break when pushed far enough. And that sometimes the scariest thing in the world is a woman who stops begging and finally says, I'm done.